Good morning, y'all. It's good to be with you again as we continue our look into what it means to be Presbyterian. Today, I'm going to talk about one of the distinctives about Presbyterianism is us being a confessional church and a church with rules and order of how we do certain things. And so today, I'm going to be speaking about the Westminster Confession of Faith as well as our Book of Order. Now, we are what's called a confessional church. And a confessional church it is one that has a statement of faith, which again, what we call the Westminster Confession of Faith, that's been adopted by the church, and actually the Westminster Confession of Faith has been adopted by several different Reformed denominations. And it's based on Scripture, and that it addresses a historical time. Now, for instance, we have elsewhere in Scripture, not in Scripture, but in the history of the church, we have things like the Nicene Creed. This is actually a confession of faith. And again, I want to say one thing. When I'm talking about us being confessional, this is not a confession of sins. This is a confession of faith, of what we believe, a statement of what we believe about Scripture. And so, because of that, our Westminster Confession of Faith, and there are several other confessions that are out there. The Belgic, the Heidelberg is actually one that I particularly enjoy. It's very, very devotional, but it is not an official statement of faith of our denomination. But there are other confessions out there. But it's a statement of faith, and just like the Nicene Creed came along at a historical time when a definition of what the Trinity was and what Scripture was about and all these things was very important, because there were some various heresies that were out there, and so the statement of faith needed to be created to kind of unify what the church believed was Orthodox belief. Now, in each of these cases, each confession, whatever it happens to be, they are subordinate to Scripture. Scripture is our highest authority. And so in no way should we ever assume that the Westminster Confession or the Apostles' Creed or any of these other confessions that exist out there, that they supersede Scripture. They do not. They are subordinate to. It contains Scripture, but it's not Scripture, and it's not as authoritative as Scripture. But the Confession of Faith deals with a bunch of different aspects, and so I'm going to actually be listing in the description some places where you can go and find the Westminster Confession on Faith online, and as well as our Book of Order that I'll talk about in just a second. But these things make us distinct because they spell out what it is that we believe about so many different things. And in fact, in the Westminster Confession of Faith, we've got historically, there are 33 chapters. The EPC has adopted 2 additional chapters, so there's 35. But they are just filled with theology and with Scripture proofs about what we believe and why we believe the things that we believe. And so I would encourage you, if you get the chance, just take some time and spend some time reading the Westminster Confession of Faith. Like I said, there's 35 chapters. You could basically say, I'm going to read a chapter a night and be done in just a little over a month. And then within that, there's all these Scripture proofs of why we believe what we believe. Then in addition to that, the Westminster Confession of Faith also has what's called a larger catechism and a shorter catechism. And so both were created to basically be kind of a question and answer format. The first one from the Westminster Shorter Catechism is probably the most famous and most well known. What is the chief end of man? Man's chief end is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. And so you get things like that all the way through. Again, just asking, what do we believe and how do we answer that? And more importantly, what Scripture proofs do we have for this belief? And so again, I would just encourage you, if you can, take some time, look at the Westminster Confession of Faith. You can look at the history. I'm not going to go into all of that right now, but it's a fascinating history and how God brought all of these different parties together to write the Westminster Confession of Faith over I think it was a 5-year period that they wrote. Just incredible the way it was handled. Then within the EPC, we also have what's called a Book of Order. The PCA has what's called a Book of Church Order. Other denominations, they have basically the same thing. It's this list of rules of how you do certain things, of how you put together a church, from calling of a pastor to calling to the election of elders and deacons, to how you handle church membership vows, to how you have to handle discipline cases. Unfortunately, there are times when the church leadership has to handle discipline cases, either for blatant sin or whatever it happens to be, and there's an order and a process of how you're supposed to go about and do that. And while some might think, well, why do we need something like that? It again just goes to show we really do believe that God is a God of order, and so there's a certain way of doing things, and so we have, again, the Book of Order. In addition to all that, it also includes some things on worship. It includes, all kinds of neat things. So again, I'm going to post that online so you can take a look at it. It's not one of those things that I would say, oh, I have to memorize this or whatever else, but it's good to know, and it's good to reference, especially if you ever do get involved in some kind of church leadership position, as you're going through, to have this resource at your fingertips that you can look up and say, well, we've got this going on. Maybe it's the buying of a piece of property. Well, how do we do this in the right way? What does the Book of Order say to that? And there's actually little pieces on things like similar to that. It may not be explicit, but you can at least imply from that what you're supposed to do. So again, these are two very, very neat documents that allow us to worship in order, that allow us to gather as a church and to figure out how to do things, but also talking about the Westminster Confession, what do we believe? So again, strongly encourage you, if you get the chance, to look at these two documents. I hope you guys have a wonderful day and a great week, and I'm so looking forward to continuing these lessons with you guys. Have a great day. Bye-bye.